We're glad to have you with us in whatever manner you're joining us, and we ask you to please join us for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Item 1.3 is approval of the agenda.
So moved. Second.
Thank you. We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? All in favor of approval of the agenda, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, nay? Chair votes aye and the agenda is approved. Item 1.4 is input from the public. This is a period devoted to comments by the general public, if any, and discussion of those comments. In the interest of privacy and due process, the public is requested to not raise personnel issues except in a legally noticed closed personnel session of the board. No action may be taken upon a matter raised. And I would just note that tonight as a board, we are going to listen and we're not going to respond because we have interviews that we would like to have time to conduct, and we don't want to keep everyone here all night. So please be aware that tonight we're going to listen, but we will not be responding to comments. And we invite you at any time, of course, to email the board, and there is also a time at the end if you feel like your questions were not answered at some point during this board meeting. You're welcome to comment at the end as well. Do we have anyone who wishes to make a public comment? I didn't mean to stop you from making public comments. All right, seeing none, we will move on to item 1.5, an update on the development of metrics for reopening. Dr. Robinson.
Okay, I'll ask Matt if you'll please put the PowerPoint slide that I sent to you. Oops. In the meantime, while we're getting that, I'll talk to you a little bit about what we're doing in regards to the direction that the board gave at the last meeting for us in the district to identify the metrics that we would be looking at there. This great, thank you. That we'll be considering as we're moving at the quarter into transitioning into getting kids back in school, which is always has been and is ultimately our goal. What we did, we did a couple of things, but we've been looking at it in terms of not necessarily metrics that we'll compare to, but tasks that we know we need to complete and we need to be ready with in order to make that transition into our kids back in school. We also, we've been working on these, but then we also met with our county officials, our county commissioners, our health officials, our partners at Nevada Gold Mines, our local officials, and board members, and had a discussion about the different metrics and the things that are happening in the community, in the county of Elko, and how they relate to the things that we're working on in order to be able to make that transition. So I just want to go over a few of them with you that we talked about. And the first one is a distance learning program. So the state is mandating that districts have a distance learning program, a full distance learning program. You know what? I purposely asked him to put a microphone here. Does that help? I hope. To have a full distance learning program as an option for those families who do not want to send their children to school just yet. And so we have the Northern Nevada Virtual Academy, and that is taken care of through a third party that provides the content for our families. And we had an overwhelming number of families that enrolled their students in NNVA. And the curriculum that's used is Edgenuity. And it was far more than we had anticipated would enroll. And so we need to be taking a look at how we're going to be able to provide for that mandate in a all distance learning program, again, for those families that are not ready to make that transition at the new quarter. So that's something we're working on. We have it pretty well together, and we're feeling really excited about that opportunity for families that choose to use it. We will be asking families what their choice is, whether it is to transition into having kids back in school, or if they want to continue with the distance learning and that sort of seamless transition that we'll provide for them. So that's the first one that we've worked on. The second one that we need to be very aware of and prepared for was professional development. Now, typically when a school district is working towards integrating technology into teaching and learning, it takes a lot of planning, and it is a long-term plan that takes a great deal of time in providing professional development to teachers and professionals so that they can adequately provide and confidently provide teaching and learning through technology. Elko County School District was not prepared. We hadn't begun that planning that really needs to be in place, that long-term planning. So we were put in a position where we had to have our teachers ready to provide teaching and learning through technology and do it very quickly. So, and that was one of the big challenges that we needed to make sure we were able to meet. Because whether it be the full distance learning and the program that we're creating, or it be a hybrid or some kind of, in person for the most part, but prepared to go into distance learning should there be an outbreak and schools have to close for even 24 hours. We've had to make sure that teachers have the tools they need to be able to make those transitions with students. And the board gave us time by delaying the start of the school year so we could provide those tools and strategies. We have 2 instructional coaches to work with our teachers and administrators so that they can continue to provide the support that they need. In order as a teacher to make that transition and to be able to integrate technology, it takes a long time, it takes a while. And I just want to commend our professionals who have done it in record time and have done an extraordinary job. It's just exceptional, the work and commitment that they've put into making this transition. It's not perfect, and everybody is at different levels of frustration, which is to be expected, but they have just done an exceptional job. And so they are, again, to be commended. But the professional development, we feel we've got a really good plan in place so that we continue to provide the support that teachers need as we transition again to having kids back in school. The 2 other pieces, the staffing and the facilities, we can kind of put together. Staffing, we just need to make sure that we are adequately staffed throughout our buildings so that when children are in classrooms, we have teachers in the classroom who can provide the instruction. So we're making sure, putting things in place that will help support teachers so that we have them in the classroom. And the other one is the facilities. Elko County has a number of communities, and every community school and school community is very unique to that community. We have a variety of buildings. We have brand new, beautiful buildings with lots of great space. And we have very small buildings, older buildings, with different configurations, and including modulars, and classes are being held in modulars. We had the team that started in May to create the plan for reopening had absolutely the best intention and created a hybrid model that would, with the intent of getting our schools as close to normal as possible, getting teachers in front of kids to the maximum that we could possibly do. The challenge with that model was that it was one model, and we have a variety of different situations and facilities. And in this case, one size is not going to fit all. So the way that we are approaching this piece of the piece that needs to be in place is we have talked to schools, and the school communities are working on this right now, that they are taking that hybrid model and they are modifying it to meet the needs of their facilities, their school community, their stakeholders, and they're working on making that modification with again the goal of getting children back in school. So that's the work that's been going on. When the decision was made to go into distance learning with the idea that at the end of the quarter, we would take a look at getting back, transitioning into getting kids back in school, that work started immediately, and these are the main pieces that we've been working on. Now, the second part that I have up there are the CDC metrics. That's the Center for Disease Control, is that right? And this is where our community partners have been important in all of this that we've been working on, but this was another part that was really important. And I'll point to the first one. These are recommendations from the CDC, things that they recommend that are in place for schools to be able to open and transition into that opening. And the first one is the number of cases per 100,000 persons in the last 14 days. The second is the percentage of tests that are positive during the last 14 days. We are thrilled to be able to say that in Elko County, we have gone from red, which is where we were at the time that school started, to yellow. And that means that as of, I think, this past Monday, bars have opened up in the county. Now, the bars have nothing to do with schools. However, it is an important, we think, indicator of where we are as a county. So that was, that also plays into the things that we're looking at. And then the school's ability to adhere to key mitigation strategies. That's also a recommendation by the CDC. We have gone over these 5 key strategies time and time again. We are feeling very confident that we will be able to meet these 5 key strategies. The cleaning and disinfection, the contact tracing, we have to work with our local health officials and partner with them in order to be able to do that effectively. The consent and correct use of face coverings, that would fall under the Governor's Emergency Directive 028. And we feel confident we'll be able to maintain that, as well as the social distancing, which was also mentioned in the directive. Remember, the governor made some changes at the elementary and middle school level, lessening the amount of feet in social distancing, which, coupled with some variances that we can apply for, we think we'll be able to really help us in making that transition. So those are the metrics. Those are the things that we've been looking at and working towards as we work towards that goal of getting students transition back into school.
Great. Questions from the board?
Yeah, I have a couple questions for you. So based on what you're talking about, are we going to be ready at the end of the 9 weeks to go into a hybrid model, at least in the elementary schools?
And absolutely. The plan is to have these more school-specific modifications of the hybrid model ready to present to the board at the next meeting.
So you are anticipating that those plans will be coming in prior to the 13th?
Absolutely.
And would there be any possibility then of opening up, say, the elementary schools that only have the 3-foot social distancing requirement before the end of the 9 weeks?
Everything that we have been working on has been with the timeline that was given at the time that the school went into distance learning, with a timeline of the 9 weeks to make the plans and be ready to go. If there's any adjustments to that, I mean, we can certainly talk about it, but really the planning has been with that 9-week period in mind.
So is one of the things that's a concern, with the not opening until the 9-week period, which is now 4 weeks away, actually, is having the distance learning program ready that is set up by our district instead of Edgenuity for those students and families that do not choose to come back?
Correct. That's a big project that we've worked on, and takes a lot of coordination. We need to make sure that we have that up and ready to go so that that transition can be made smoothly. And it will be dependent on the number of families that say, we're not ready to transition in. And that could be a large number, as it was when we were first talking about going into the hybrid model, or it could be significantly lower. That's something that we're going to, once we present the plans at the next board meeting, the next step will be putting out something to parents to ask them which direction they want to go, whether they will be bringing their children back into that transition plan and back into school, or if they prefer to stay with the distance learning plan.
Going back to what Candace was asking her last question, is there a possibility, and we had talked about this at one of the former meetings, of doing a graduated approach by having teachers who felt comfortable with live students in their class, starting at that kindergarten level and then progressing up through the grade levels?
Absolutely, and I believe that will be what will happen when we begin that transition. The challenge is we get into the staffing, because as you're saying, if we find out the teachers that are comfortable with having their children face-to-face, I can't predict the number, nor can I predict can I guarantee that it will fall into a nice, neat pattern that will provide that opportunity for the greatest number.
Then we'll probably have to be proactive, though, about people who would need teleworking versus being live in person.
That's a big area that we have to be working on, that falls under the staffing and whether we're able to accommodate that or not.
And I would assume, it just popped in my head, that any metric we're using to assess the community needs, that there'd be something on there about if we go to this next phase, or, I guess we wouldn't call it phase, but if we go into this next transition, we would have to know which parents intend to do the virtual academy versus in class or doing some other option, right?
Absolutely, and so that will be the first thing that happens after the plans or the modified models are presented. First thing we have to do then is gauge from the community, parents, whether they will be participating in that transition and having their children come back into the classroom, or if they will be continuing with the distance education model. That's going to be critical in the next steps that we take.
Okay, it was my understanding, and correct me if I'm misunderstanding this, the virtual academy, the people who, and the kids, the parents, as well as the students that enrolled in that with the knowledge that they were in there for the entire semester, for a 2 9-week period of time, not just until the other transitions. So we're not talking about the virtual academy and then the full distance learning. We're talking two separate things.
That is correct. So when we first were going with that hybrid model that was first presented, we had, as I said, an overwhelming response from parents who wanted to go into the virtual academy. The number was significant. I think it ended up being the second largest school in our district.
Third largest.
Third largest school in our district.
Elko High School and Spring Creek High School were the only 2 schools larger than NNVA at the school.
Okay, so at that time, and as I said, that was overwhelming. That program was not meant to support that many students. When the decision was made to start the 9 weeks in distance learning, or not the 9 weeks, I'm sorry, the quarter in distance learning, just about less than half of the students came off of the NNVA rules and chose to participate in the distance learning program that involved our teachers, our ECSD teachers. So we have a number on the rules for NNVA that we can support, and they have the understanding that they are on there for the semester. But they're families that have indicated to us that this is what they want to continue to do.
And I'm sure that we've got numbers from breaking out those students into which campus they came off of, if it happened to be a north side, so we can get those exact numbers that you were alluding to here just a little bit ago with regards to that. So that, if the number 400, X number of that is in this particular school or that school, so we know what the enrollment numbers close. But the old virtual, the other virtual classroom, those numbers are questionable, and until the parents sign up or make a commitment one way or the other, we won't know those numbers. That
We won't. We can make predictions based on the number of families that left NNVA to transition into the distance education, full distance education that the district is in right now. We can make predictions, but we can't say for sure because things have changed. They've changed in the community with going from red to yellow. That may bring a sense of confidence in having children return to school. Experiencing some of the successes that we've heard about in the distance learning program. We know it's not for everybody, but there are some families that have expressed that it has worked well for them. And maybe they weren't in NNVA, they may want to stay in the distance learning and continue the year that way. So we can make predictions, but we can't have a solid number until we survey parents and get that response from them.
the survey, and every time we turn around, we're gonna survey this, we're gonna survey that, but do we have the ability to contact those people that have, if they are interested in that, if they could be identified so that we have a better idea of how many students we're actually dealing with in that group?
You're talking about ahead of time before?
Yeah. In the next 2 weeks.
Oh, yeah, definitely, yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
Understanding that anything that we do, the board's meeting every 2 weeks,
Mhm.
and by the time, an idea comes up, it takes a month from the time the idea is basically developed to where we'll see any kind of result from that. So looking at that transition, it's going to be a 2 week to a month in order to get that information. So.
Okay, well, I have a question as far as that's concerned then, because in the hybrid model, our teachers are also teaching online, correct? Wouldn't there be a way to plug those children whose parents don't want them to go to school at all? Couldn't we just plug them into a situation where they would just participate in the online learning every day?
That's essentially what we're doing with this distance learning program that we're putting together. It will be with Elko County School District teachers.
Right.
So
then it won't really matter how many kids you expect to sign up for NNVA, correct? I mean, if they can just plug into stay with the online only aspect of the teaching instead of coming back to school.
They'll have to be in a separate group with separate teachers other than the teachers doing the hybrid. We'll have to keep them in a separate program. Because of the way the hybrid works and the lesson planning and the delivery of instruction, they would have to be kept separate with a separate teacher.
So it's gonna require moving staff and everything else once we do this, is what's gonna happen, because we're gonna have to have staff that are just specifically doing that distance learning for those students who wanna stay in distance learning, and we'll have to have staff that will work in the hybrid.
Right, and again, this is outside of NNVA because those families will stay right there with what they're working on. This is, and that's why it's gonna be so dependent on numbers and dependent on what's happening with staff.
just,
They're separate from the virtual academy. It would be, as it is right now, there would be teachers who are teaching virtually now, that those students that we're talking about, that want to stay virtual, they'd be put into groups with them.
Correct.
And the virtual academy would also be doing their thing with their students right there, so.
Correct.
Okay.
The virtual academy is not facilitated by ECSD teachers.
Right. So just to be clear though, then, what you're saying is we meet the directives from the governor as far as being able to open the schools in a hybrid model, as long as we can meet the social distancing parameters.
The social distancing and the directives that have come out, we feel confident we'll be able to do that. The models will be specific to the school community, and they will be modifications of the plan, the original model that was presented.
Okay, thank you.
so also just to clarify, I know it's important to note that, so we could have, Carlin could be operating a hybrid one way, Wells is a different way, Jackpot, West Wendover, Spring Creek, Elko, all of these schools could be operating a hybrid in a different model because they're specifically looking at their facilities, their staff, and everything else. So each community could look a little different.
Could look a little different, yes.
And if a community wanted to stay distance learning, thinking of my friends in Hawaii,
Yes,
they can stay. Okay.
yes, they can. And we expect that they will.
Yeah, what about like a Wells? Are they kind of out of the woods at this point, or could they be fully, we decide at the end of the 9 weeks, could they be fully in the classroom then?
It depends on, the numbers and, their ability to be able to meet the directives. If the population is such that they could meet the directives and be in person, then yes.
And was
That's
Jackpot one of those
potential.
schools initially that we had?
We had,
Okay.
we have to, they're taking a look at that plan because it wasn't quite working out as neatly as we thought it would with the numbers, but they're also considering what would be the best plan for their community, their facilities, and given the staffing that they have.
So might that also include letting the elementary kids go back to school under the hybrid plan, even if the high school can't meet the social distancing parameters?
That could be, depending on the community and the facilities and the staffing and all those things that I mentioned.
And depending on facilities, we could have elementary all back, potentially, right? If they've got space, we could have all the elementary kids back in class, full-time, no hybrid, if
There
they
is the
can meet all of
potential.
those guidelines, correct?
Right, there is the potential, as long as they're meeting the mandates and the directives. At this point, there's potential for an array of possibilities, because each community is so unique in the characteristics of the community.
And it's my understanding that the county health officials, Dr. Putnam, and the group that's there, have basically authorized the green light for us to begin to go into that transition. Is that correct?
Dr. Putnam was on the team that developed the reopening plan and the hybrid model and the distance learning and the hybrid and whatnot. So he was on that team from the very beginning in May, I think, when they started.
But I'm talking specifically here this last week, and with us changing to the yellow, at that point, has he authorized us to go ahead? Because being the county health official, I think his responsibility is partially to give us the direction there, and that should be tying in with some of these metrics.
Which is why we've been working so closely with the health officials and the deputy health officer, the person that works in the capacity with the schools. And the success that the county has made correlates specifically with, you know, the success across the county, and as I said, the businesses that have opened and whatnot. So and because Dr. Putnam was so intimately involved in the development of the plan, there's been that, there hasn't, what we would have normally is the health officials have the ability to shut schools down. That's definitely within the authority that they have. We know that Dr. Putnam is and the health officials are comfortable with the hybrid and the transitioning in, and have not given us any indication that there would be any concerns
Any
with,
problem. So
Yeah.
the answer is basically giving us the green light to start moving forward as of this week.
I just want to make sure I'm not putting words in Dr. Putnam's mouth.
Okay,
There's
I-
not
Well, and we
been-
gotta keep in mind, like, the health officer can't direct us to do anything, which is what happened in Washoe. The public health officer wanted the district to do one thing, the district did the opposite. He can't stop them from doing that. And so it is hard for Dr. Putnam to say what we should do. And
Right.
I mean, he can give us advice, but.
With the metrics where we're at right now, it seems as though he wouldn't have any problem whatsoever with us moving into the transition.
Correct.
That's where I'm coming from.
Correct.
So, okay.
I'm just kind of having a thought, so because some of our schools don't have a ton of staff, so let's say we have like an AP teacher, just one teacher for a specific subject or something, and they opt to teach in the hybrid, what happens to the kids that would normally take that class, but they want to stay virtual?
Well, those are pieces that we're working on. You're shaking your head. Do you want to?
That is without a doubt one of the biggest obstacles that we're facing right now, particularly for those kids at the high school and the secondary levels who take what we affectionately call in the high school levels one-first, where there's one section of one class that 10 kids take one period a day, and their entire schedule is built around the fact that they have to be in that one class. It goes back to what Dr. Robb was referring to earlier with the staffing. There are possibilities and there are logistics that we're working on to accommodate those particular issues, but I'd be lying if I said it's gonna be easy. It's not, it's gonna be tough.
No one
but we're-
expects easy.
Yeah, but we're definitely working on contingencies for that.
Okay, good, okay.
You're watching the Utah news, that was just the headline.
Was that the
Utah,
Utah?
that AP kids couldn't take them from home, so.
Any other questions from the board? All right, thank you, Dr. Robinson, and thank you to the staff, and thank you to the teachers that are making this happen, and thank you to parents who just keep trudging on. We're gonna make this happen, and ECSD is gonna survive. We're gonna be all right. We will move on to item 1.6, the first round of candidate interviews for District 3 for a board vacancy for possible appointment October 13th, 2020. So how we're going to proceed is we have 4 candidates that have applied for the position, the vacant position, and we would ask, once we draw names and determine who's going to go first, we would ask that the other candidates leave. We have the SROs to escort you to another location, just out of fairness, so that you don't hear the questions and get an advantage over the other candidates. And then at the end, we will bring you all back together, and we might even move all 4 of you into the front row here, and we will ask you to work through a scenario together, acting as a 4-person board. So first of all, we're going to, I guess I can tear this off and we'll make it look really random. And I'll have Mr. Zeisler draw the first name. All right, and I have lots of hats, but I didn't bring one. I try to take a few of them off every once in a while.
Mrs. Fish.
All right, so Mrs. Fish will be first. Okay. We're gonna draw for the second.
Mr. Cooley.
Okay, Mr. Cooley will be second. Pass it down.
Mr. Gerber?
Mr. Gerber, and that means Mrs. Miller, you will be fourth. All right, so we cannot demand that you leave, but we would ask that you do out of fairness if you would like to. And we will keep Mrs. Fish here. And Mrs. Fish, if you'd like to come up front, we would love to have you move up here and we'll get started.
Where are you talking up front?
Yep, right here at the computer, if that's okay. And you may stand or sit, whatever you're comfortable with.
Comfortable sitting. Okay.
Well, welcome. We're glad to have you here. Thank you for coming and thank you for applying. The board members all have questions. I will start with just tell us about yourself and what got you interested in applying for this position.
I'm a retired school teacher, as most of you know. I've taught in the regular ed and I've taught in special ed. My last position was here at the Oakland County School District as teacher for the visually impaired. And at the current time, I have 6 grandchildren living with me, 4 of whom are in school. And this goes from a senior to an 8th grader, to a 3rd grader, to a 2nd grader, and then we have a 2-year-old, which is creating all kinds of difficulties, as you can well imagine. My education has been primarily in social studies and English. I've taught almost everything that you needed to know in that area. And I've worked in special ed with other areas, including industrial arts, science. The one thing I never taught was math. That was my husband's purview, and he was extremely good at it. I am not. And that's about it.
Well, thank you. Sounds like a great introduction to me. All right, we'll start with Mrs. Wines.
How are you this evening?
Okay.
I would like to know, what kind of relationship do you think a school district and the board should have with its community and with its parents and families?
They all need to work together. If they don't, you're going to have chaos. The board needs to present the ideas. The school district and the board together need to present the ideas. And if parents have better ideas, let them come. That's what's needed. We need the diversity.
Mrs. Dickinson, would you like to take the next question?
Hello, Mrs. Fish. We miss Keith a lot. Just want to let you know. What does a school board do?
Basically, you make up the directions that the school district has to go. If you don't give some information to the schools and to the superintendent as to which way you believe the school needs to go, then the school is not going to be able to go into any success.
All right, Mr. Zeisler.
Is there a list of questions? I didn't.
You just have to bring your own. If you're not ready, I'll get you one. But we'll move to Mr. Cooney. I will gladly share some questions with you. Just give me 10 seconds
Okay.
and I'll pull some up.
Thank you
for
very much, Sue, for applying for this. What strengths will you bring to the board?
Probably more than anything else is an ability to listen. I think that's more important than anything else. An ability to think. How does it affect the teachers? How does it affect the students? How does it affect the janitors, our secretaries? Those are the people that are the important ones.
Thank you.
All right, Mr. Zeisler, if you're ready, go ahead.
I sure am. Hello, Ms. Fisher. How would you handle the request if approached by an individual or special interest groups?
I might be talking to them, but the other thing that I would emphasize as a single individual, I am not talking for the board. The only way the board can talk is as a group. You have to have a quorum.
Thank you. And Mr. Wines couldn't be with us tonight. He's got some issues going on with sheep and shipping and everything else, and so he's in garbage, and he could not even join us virtually. So he may have some questions to ask candidates when we reconvene next time, but I will just go ahead and take the next question. How do you balance data, public opinion, and perception with making good decisions, or for making good decisions?
Data, I think, gives you a cold-blooded look at something. You know, it's black and white, it's not gray. But people themselves are the ones that are going to make the gray. You know, you're talking about going into a virtual setup. If I am a teacher that has a immune system, like my husband's, for example, I don't know if I'd want to be in the hybrid system, because his immune system was not extremely good. If you are talking about teachers that are going to go into distance learning, how long are they going to be able to talk? You know, you've got to be able to talk a lot and do. I've noticed that, well, for example, one of my grandkids is in special ed. And we take him back and forth to school every day. And today, I couldn't do it. We only have 2 drivers, my one granddaughter and myself. And I couldn't do it, and my granddaughter was in a meeting, was in one of the meetings for school. And so I said, you know, you better call and say, hey, you're going to be a little bit late, but you'll be there, because this kid gets a little upset if you're not there on time. But for the most part, we've had really no problems, other than one grandkid doesn't know how to sign in. We'll get that eventually. But it just, I don't know, those are the important things.
Thank you. Mrs. Wines, do you have another question?
I did not have a second
Okay,
question.
and that's okay. I'm just gonna go. We don't want to keep you here all night, but I will ask if.
I have another one.
Okay.
Why would you like to join our board now?
One of the things I got to thinking about with COVID, Keith and I lost a daughter. I don't want anybody else to go through that. So that's why I would be extremely cautious about jumping right in. We need to look at everything that there is there and say, hey, what is best for our kids? And you all wouldn't be on the board if you didn't think the same thing. Okay?
Thank you.
Done.
Okay. we're just gonna keep this simple then. So thank you, Mrs. Fish, for being here, and thank you for already serving on the board in a special capacity, providing Keith for us for a while.
I was a
Appreciate
drummer.
it. That's an important role. All right, let's see. Mr. McEnany, would you go get Mr. Pooley for us?
Sorry, misread the email.
It's okay. Did you write your question down so you can ask the same?
I did.
Okay.
Yep. Thank you.
No problem.
At least what I remember me saying, so.
No worries.
We don't have the detention, so you got it.
Oh, I can make one. Just saying.
Your choice.
Just saying.
Right. Well, welcome, Mr. Pooley. Thank you for being with us, and you're welcome to stand or sit or whatever you like. We appreciate you applying for this position and look forward to hearing your answers. So I will start, and then we'll go along the table and ask you questions. So first of all, tell us about yourself and what got you interested in applying for this position.
My name is Chris Pooley. I'm 36. I'm an electrician, paramedic, father of 5. I live in Carlin. I'm interested in the position because I have kids in the school there. I'm in the district, and I have a dog in the fight, per se. I want to see the kids get the best education and be prepared for life and careers and college. And whether it's my kids or other kids in the community, I care about that.
Thank you. All right, Mrs. Wines?
Good evening.
Good evening.
What kind of relationship do you think the Elko County School District, the board, and the board should have with its community and with its parents and family?
I think it should be a very candid and transparent relationship where we should disclose things and be clear about the decisions that are made and why you're making them.
Thank you.
All right, Stevenson?
What does the school board do?
They vote on policies that the superintendent and schools administrators have to follow, and they hopefully serve the interests of the people within the communities that they are elected from.
All right, Mr. Cooney?
All right. What strengths will you bring to the board?
I like to think that I'm thorough and that I am willing to see things from someone else's perspective, to look at multiple options and to think outside the box.
Thank you.
All right, Mr. Zeiss?
Thanks for coming. How would you handle being questioned about an agenda item by individuals or special interest groups? How would you maybe handle that situation?
I would take my time before I respond. I would have specific references that I'm using, and ideally it would correspond to some tangible thing that someone else can look at that I can refer to, rather than just directing them to a previous discussion that had been had. We could reference an actual meeting and have a hyperlink available in the description of the YouTube comments.
All right. So how do you balance data, public opinion, and perception for making good decisions?
I think always coming back to the why it is that the school board exists, the function of the board, the function of the school district, and then that as the guiding principle is the way that it should be balanced, with the perspective of what are we doing to prepare kids, get them that mastery that comes if we're focusing on that rather than which bathroom you're using or what the current sports situation is. If we're looking at the end game, the long-term strategy, not on appeasing the masses, on appeasing somebody that wants to accelerate something when it shouldn't be, taking the time when necessary to make decisions with all the data.
Great, thank you. All right, and Tammy, you have
Back
the
to
other
me?
question, yes.
Why do you want to join our board now?
Because there's a vacancy. Carlin had someone. I feel that I don't need to speak if there's already someone that's speaking for me. But given the current situation, I would like a candidate that shares my values, serving within the district, and that will help fulfill the mission of Elko County School District within the school that my family resides.
All right, any other questions from the board? All right, well, Mr. Pooley, thank you. We appreciate it. We're going to keep it short and sweet, and we'll go ahead and invite you to sit down. Thank you for being with us tonight. All right, Mr. Gerber is next. Yes, please, you may sit or stand, whatever you're comfortable with.
I can sit. Thank you.
That's fine. Yeah, well, thank you for joining us, and thank you for applying for this position. We appreciate your interest, and we appreciate having you here with us. I'll start with the first question, and then we'll shift to the other board members. So first of all, tell us about yourself and what got you interested in applying for this position.
Well, I think as we can all agree, 2020 has been a pretty unique year, and it's brought on some fairly extreme reactions from a lot of people. And so I think as a community, we really need to bind together and we pull resources basically from places we're not used to pulling for different solutions. We need an extraordinary solution at this point for our children and our community. And I say children and community because they're really binded together. As far as from my background a little bit, my mother was a teacher. She just retired about 2 years ago. So even if I'm not in the teaching, my whole scholar life, if you will, I was surrounded by teachers and I was in the world of teaching. So I think on that level, I can bring a different insight, and I'm really passionate about children and this community. So that's pretty much why I'm in front of you today, because I think that we need to look outside the box to find solutions.
Thank you. Mrs. Wines?
Good evening, Mr. Gerber. Thanks
Good
for
evening.
joining us. What kind of relationship do you think that the Elko County School District and this board should have with its community and with its parents and families?
I believe that the board and the school district should be almost not even separated from the county and the community. The community really has to be a part of the board, if you will, and the board has to be part of the community. We have to do everything. We have an amazing core of teachers, amazing student body, and that's really the two things we really need to focus on. So I think the board and the community have to push that forward. The parents almost will fall in once all those things are put forward.
Thank you.
Mrs. Dickinson?
Questions are too quick. What does a school board do?
From my understanding, the school board plans a vision. And once we have that vision, we can set goals for the superintendent, and that way we can actually hold the superintendent accountable to those goals, and we have to give her the tools to make those decisions and to be able to fulfill those goals. If we don't have that united vision of where we're headed, we can't expect her to be able to do her job in that sense.
All right, Mr. Cooney?
Thank you, Luke, for coming this evening.
Well, thank you.
What strengths will you bring to the board?
I think strangely enough, I'm a people person. I can read people, and I can have an understanding of what reactions will happen at a given situation. I've always been good with people in that sense. And as a business owner and the role we've played in the community, I think we really have the best interest of the community at heart. So I think what I will bring to the board is a more pragmatic, not saying that you guys aren't pragmatic, don't get me wrong, but just a new view, especially coming from Europe. I have a different background when it comes to schooling. The school systems are a little different. So maybe just a fresh insight, just like I was saying, thinking out the box, just a question that maybe somebody else wouldn't ask, might hit my mind versus somebody else's.
Thank you.
All right, Mr. Zeisel.
Will you still be producing incredible food at your restaurant while on the board?
I hope so.
And I have a second question. Say, in your restaurant, how would you handle being questioned about an agenda item by individuals or special interest groups?
Well, I think like most situations when you walk into these kind of positions as a board trustee or a member, you initially you come in and you almost have a vision of too much power, if you will, not in a bad sense, but you can change the world, right? We're all here for the best interest, and I don't know why you guys aren't doing it and so forth. But I think in reality, we're limited in what we can do as a single person. So to answer your specific question, if somebody approached me with a specific answer, depending on the district they're in, you can listen, obviously, you can encourage them, take it into account, and then probably as a board, bring it up to the next meeting or consult with everybody else on the board. You're not gonna solve an issue by yourself on the board. That's not, otherwise it'd be a dictatorship. We wouldn't be seven people, we just have a superintendent.
Thank you.
All right, Mrs. Dickinson had another question.
Why do you want to join our board now?
It's a moving train. Why do it any other time? Honestly, I was asked, and my oldest daughter really wants to learn about what you can do as a person and as an individual. So I really try to push forward with her that you can either be part of the problem or part of the solution. It's easy to stay home and say the teachers aren't doing their job, the board members aren't doing their job, the governor's not doing their job. Whereas if you're part of the solution, you might not be the solution, you probably won't be, but at least you can help guide and partake in it so that you're making a positive impact on your community.
All right, any other questions? All right, Mr. Gerber, thank you. We appreciate you coming
thank
and
you so
being
much.
with us, and we'll bring our next candidate in. All right. We find Sarah?
Sergeant Brudieska taught me hand signals for.
Perfect. That's, we're all about efficiency, make things happen, right? As quickly as possible. Right up front, you consider stand, whatever you're comfortable with.
I'll stand.
That's just fine. Well, Mrs. Miller, thank you for joining us, and thank you for your interest in this position. We appreciate you being here. First of all, tell us about yourself and what got you interested in applying for this position.
So my name is Amber Miller, and I am a mother of two. I am also a 6th generation rancher, and my husband is an 8th generation rancher, and we have the Gund Ranch in Lee. I have always believed that education is important. I believe that it takes a village to raise a child, and I am interested in this position because I want to be in a place where I feel that I can contribute to the school district and be a positive influence for the education of the children in Elko County.
Thank you. All right, Mrs. Wines.
Thank you, Mrs. Miller, for joining us this evening, for applying. What kind of relationship do you think that the Elko County School District and this board should have with its community and with its parents and families?
I think it needs to be an open door relationship where communication is freely encouraged between parents, teachers, and communities, along with the board and the district as well. I've been fortunate to be able to send my kids to 2 different types of schools in the district. They attended the one-room schoolhouse, Mound Valley, in Jigs for several years. And then we did homeschool them. And then they did return to middle school and high school in Spring Creek. Our son only went to high school there. But our daughter is currently in high school, but did attend middle school there too. And I've always felt that as a parent and even teachers that you have to be able to have that open communication with everybody, because communication is the key to success for not only teachers and children, but the district itself.
Thank you. Ms. Dickinson.
What does the school board do?
So the school board ensures or upholds the policies and ensures that the children in our district receive the best education possible.
Mr. Cooney.
All right, thank you, Amber, for applying, and it's nice seeing you this evening. What strengths will you bring to the board?
The strengths I would bring to the board is I am a very thoughtful person in my process. I don't make rash decisions. I like to gather information and put all of the pieces together and ponder things before making decisions. I listen, and the other thing that I do is I do advocate well for something that I believe in.
Thank you.
Mr. Zeisler.
Hello, Ms. Miller. That's where I wrote it. How would you handle being questioned about an agenda item by individuals or special interest groups?
So is this an agenda item that
Anything
they
that.
just see it on the
Yep, they see it on the
agenda?
agenda and they come to you out in Lee.
Okay, I would ask them to tune into the next board meeting. That is something that would be discussed, if it's on the agenda, it would be discussed at the board meeting. And I would not give an opinion on it at that time.
Thank you.
All right. So how do you balance data, public opinion, and public perception when to make good decisions?
So there's a balance in everything, and you guys have found that out recently. The balance point isn't going to make everybody happy, but you take the information that you get, or I take the information that I get, and decide where it sits on the scale, and where my decision usually lies is the middle, where both sides will balance. So not everybody will be happy, but it will be something that would work for the situation.
Thank you. Tammy, another question?
Piggybacking on that, why do you want to join our board now?
I have considered joining the board for several years. The thing that held me back was I had 2 children at home, 1,000 head of cattle, and a lot of different things on my plate. I serve on a national board for the National Cattlemen's Beef Association. I also serve on Nevada Cattlemen's Board of Directors. And at the time that I first pondered it, I did not feel that I could give enough attention and devotion to the Elko County School Board. Now, I'm in a different position where we have balanced our ranch life and with only one child at home and very independent. I feel I have enough time to give 100% to this board as I do to the other boards that I sit on. Thank you.
Any other questions from the board? I do have one. When your application came in, we called the county and there's a discrepancy on your address. So I'd like you to clarify that and tell us how that is going to come about.
Okay, so when I applied, I thought I was in District 3. So apparently I was in District 3 for a very long time. And we sold that part of our ranch. So unbeknownst to me, I was not in District 3 anymore. However, we own a home in District 3. And so I am changing my voter registration to our home in District 3. And it's a lifetime home. It's not something we're going to sell in the next year or any time.
Thank you. We just wanted to make sure that was clarified in case someone looked up and said, hey, this is what your address is, but it's important to note that we'll need to know that change by the next board meeting is complete so that we know you are an eligible candidate for District 3, even though you reside in District 3 on a regular basis. All right, thank you. All right, if we can ask all of the candidates to come back up and we'll just kind of have you social distance around the table. We will throw out a scenario that we would like you as a group, as a board, to work through and present us a solution. So I have a scenario in mind, but if anyone else on the board has a scenario, I will let them go forth with their scenario.
Go for it.
Okay.
Can we have them do the reopening?
That's exactly what I'm
Solve
doing.
it.
All right, so here's your scenario, and we're going real life here. So Tammy and I are thinking the same. Here we are in a worldwide pandemic, and it is controversial, to say the least, because we have people that are like, this is real, this is crazy, this is hard, and people are saying, this can't be real. Let's just make things happen. So how do you, as a board, the four of you, come up with a plan to communicate to the community what you're going to do, and how do you deal with the variety of opinions, the variety of concerns that stem from all over the county? We have so many different communities. How do you deal with that? So we're going to give you, is 5 minutes sufficient time to work together and come up with a plan?
No.
We can provide pen and paper if you need it. There you go, that works.
I'll work.
All right, I'm going to set a timer, and we're going to give you 5 minutes.
What's the population?
10,000 students. Population of the county.
Okay, but are we in red, yellow, green?
Well, right now we're in yellow.
Yeah, but where were you then?
What was that?
Were we then?
Then we're red, the whole country was red back then.
Yeah.
Okay, so, let's look at first of all, should we have a test group to see what the students are comfortable doing? Like a survey to see what they're comfortable doing in class so that they can learn. First step. Second step would be, in my opinion, what about the teachers? Are the teachers not the liability issue, but the health issue? Are they content with working in live students or not? If so, what do we do? If not, what do we do? Then there's the liability issue,
Yes.
which we can't negate, we can't eliminate, but we can probably be proactive and have a plan so that we can limit.
We also need to include parents in there too.
Well,
Not just
that's the
students.
economic issue.
Yeah. How are the parents, are they concerned about, I'm at work, my kid's at home,
Mm-hmm.
what's gonna happen?
Well, then there's the problem of, not just the babysitting, but the accountability. Who's
Yes.
accountable so that that kid, if it is at home, will be signing in? Who's accountable for the teachers and the SR student? Who's gonna make sure the welfare of that child should be our first priority.
And we already know that as far as special ed is concerned, the kids are going to school.
Mhm.
So that negates any problems there.
I think we need to look at each school individually. Our county is a schools that have 10 children, up to 1,200. I would start with the smaller schools,
What I call the valley schools.
right, or the one-year schoolhouses to Wells, Harlan, Jackpot, Milwaukee.
So then how flexible are we? So if we take their 9-week plan, every school is independent. We're moving from red to yellow to green, whatever the phases are, and we'll go back and forth. So what do we do? Can a school in Wells open prior to this 9 weeks if they hit the parameters and can do it? Can a school in Elko do it? Can Northside do it even if Southside doesn't? Or do we have to do a blanket
And before
and
we,
look at the 9 weeks? Or can we reevaluate? Do we have a term where we can reevaluate every 2 weeks during every new meeting so that we can do case by case?
before you even get started is internet. We know we
Yeah.
have a problem.
We can leave some of that.
With hotspots, and they've actually done a good job with that, yeah.
Yes, they've done a good job with that, but you can relieve some of that by sending some of these smaller schools that are comfortable going back sooner, and that will take off some of the weight as you continue to add these schools back into the plan.
I really liked the perspective that they spoke about in the last board meeting about this works really great for some kids, this
Mhm.
distance learning, but it doesn't work for all kids. And it's almost an age-specific issue. So if we had these smaller test groups that we used, with the specific emphasis on kids that need in classroom situations, they can use the bigger rooms that middle school kids or some of the high school kids don't necessarily need because they're able to use the online distance learning approach
Yeah, you
and
can-
giving a larger classroom to
And how do
younger
we,
kids.
how do we hold accountable every school in different counties to have the same plan? Meaning every math teacher starts at 9, every math teacher uses 1 or 2 platforms instead of whole array of different platforms. Who's accountable for that? The superintendent or the principals? So how do we escalate that? And what if one teacher doesn't feel comfortable in that school? Do those students have to get another teacher, or are they forced online?
So here's my concern with this, and where we have to work around the test group, is you have students who are 3 weeks in to their school year, used to, think about the elementary school kids, that takes them a while to get used to a teacher, and they're used to seeing this teacher on a screen. Now, are we going to put them in a test group where they don't have that same teacher? Because that's
That would be a teacher who would have to volunteer.
That would be a starting over for
Mhm.
that student, so we have to consider that with the parents as well, because the younger kids are the ones that are gonna be most affected by
The
this reopening.
routine.
By the
In
change,
some
yeah.
cases, you're going to have kids that have an attention span of a gnat's eyelash.
All right, so that is your 5 minutes. We have had, the school district has had months, so that was really fast. I love to hear all of your discussion. Do you want a little more time to prepare how you want to present to us your solutions?
We're ready to reopen.
There you go.
We have a few more minutes, 2 more
Yeah,
minutes.
I'll give you, would you like another 5 so that you can discuss a little more and
A couple.
prepare to
I just
present?
think 2 would be
Yeah.
good.
Gotcha, 2 it is.
So what's our most important metric?
That's the most.
Who's gonna be dictating the real students, the schools, and the teachers, or?
You're gonna have to have a combination of all of them.
All of them together.
Yeah, so let's establish a test group.
Okay.
Yeah.
So a test group has a whole bunch of volunteers,
With who?
So,
and different groups, will we need a test group in each school, or, because you were talking about age-specific issues.
Mm-hmm. I think that's, to me, that's, as the board has discussed previously, people have raised concerns, like distance learning is very effective for some. Identify these students and these students that fit the high demand. Have teachers that are accountable and
not viable.
supplement somewhere with that.
Okay. So
And what-
these students are back in school.
Mhm.
So
And what do we do?
And I say
The other-
we test group a younger group.
The
With a
other
larger
problem
space.
that you also have is that each area, like Wendover has other problems that
Mhm.
Waukee does not have, and so on and so forth for each area that you go
But
to.
something we're gonna have to have a plan for the whole spectrum is, if there is an outbreak, how do we handle the outbreak? Where does it get escalated? Can we
Yeah.
get immediate testing, the 12-minute test or the 15-minute test, so that if you have symptoms, what point are the nurses trained for that? Then, like say, if it's one case versus 10 cases versus the whole school, at what point do we escalate? What are the different steps? And do we have a plan to go online if they're sick, or do we just,
And how long do you
how
go
long do they have to be
online?
out? Exactly. So as long as we
Okay,
have
so
that
we
plan
go
in
with-
place.
We go with the read open, age specific in the bigger areas, Elko.
To what age?
Well, I think we need a segment,
Each
of
area.
each,
Of each
a
grade.
slice of each
Yeah.
age,
And then
then promote the test
outlying
groups and then move
schools.
forward.
Okay.
Okay.
And our outlying schools at the same time.
I think they've almost cracked it. If we give them like 3 more minutes, I think we're gold.
This is awesome.
So I think, I'll start off and then, so initially, our first step would be to have a plan on, what would happen with the outbreaks if we're going full school. Then the second part, and I'll have somebody else explain this, would be a test group that would be age-specific and region-specific for different, and these are the communities who want to partake. So we're going to put it on to each community, let it be Wells, Owyhee, Elko, Spring Creek, each school has the right to partake in it or not. It's a volunteer basis, to see if they can accommodate 20 students or 30 students, depending on how big that school is, so that we can run with that test group for now.
As part of that, we have administrators who understand the constraints of their own schools, and we have teachers who are willing to be accountable for in-person teaching. We have focus groups that we can focus on smaller age-specific situations and have multiple test groups in specifically the outlying areas, and then in some of the smaller schools that have larger classrooms that have the ability to accommodate the needs of those administrators.
It would give parents the option at that point to say, I am ready, I'm a single mom, I'm a single dad, I need my kids to be in this test group, or somebody, I'm perfectly fine with my kids being with distance learning for a few more weeks until we see how this is fitting in with the matrix of our state and our district.
Also too, why do you want your kids in the test group? Is it because you are looking for a babysitter? Or are there other reasons?
Mhm.
Is it the betterment for the kid? Education, the best education we have now is with the teacher in a classroom. We don't have it right now. We're doing as best we can. So why do they want them there? Or why do they not want them there in turn?
Questions from the board? And you guys did an awesome job, by the way, thank you. 'Cause I love to watch groups interact, and, you know, you guys could work as a good board, so just be prepared for, you know, when elections come up next, you gotta just hop in. Somebody's gotta move somewhere else, so you can't be in the
You
same
have to
district.
move.
Okay, questions from the board regarding their scenario?
No question, just, I thought that was really a interesting way to set that up, Teresa.
This is my thing. I love
Totally
this
blaming
kind
it
of
on you,
stuff.
but
We blamed on Florida, so.
anyway, it was very good.
And I just wanted to comment to say that it sounds like all of you know the issue very well in your respective communities and understand what's going on with our school district, so that was good to hear. Thank you.
I don't have a
You make our
question. Oh, go ahead.
You make our job tough in deciding the appointment, so very nice. And thank you guys again, guys and gals.
Thank you for having us.
You have one question?
I didn't have a question, I just had a comment that, more than the content of the presentation, I was looking at how you guys work together. Because, you know, whoever gets the spot is jumping into a mess. And it's so impressive to see how easily and confidently you moved with each other and communicated with each other. It was really awesome. And to echo what Mr. Cooney said, you're not making this easy. And I'm thrilled at the depth of candidates we had. I think it's a testament to Mr. Fish. He would be so happy to see all of you here, because what he'd always say is, if you don't like what I'm doing, run against me. And nobody ever did. And it was probably because he was awesome, but he would be loving this right now. So I want to thank you guys.
Thank you, we appreciate that, and we look forward to seeing you all on October 13th. Any other questions or comments from the board before we move on?
Was that 13th meeting scheduled for Wednesday?
I believe the 13th meeting was scheduled for Wendover, but
We
let's say we have moved them all to here for now. Correct, Dr. Robinson? We'll just clarify. I know we have, but I'd like clarification for sure. Yeah, so all of our meetings will be here for the time being until we're able to open schools, and then that would be a more appropriate time for the board to be able to travel as well. So we will be here, so we look forward to seeing you here October 13th. And again, thank you for coming. Thank you for your interest in the position, and thank you for wanting to make a difference for Elko County School District and for the students that we serve. We appreciate your time. We appreciate the talents we've already seen just in this little short window of time. So thank you. All right, we will move on to item 2.1, receipt, review, and possible approval of the ECSD Restorative Practices Plan for school year 2021.
This is a report or a plan that is submitted to the board every year for your review and consideration, and then submitted to the Department of Education.
Move to approve.
Second?
Thank you. We have a motion and a second. Any discussion?
I just had a question. Has this changed at all from last year's plan?
No, indicating it has not. It's reviewed every year, even if there are not changes made, it is looked at.
Okay, thank you.
And could it change based on legislation, this upcoming legislative session? Okay,
Sure,
yep.
yeah.
Things can always change, right?
We have learned that.
I just didn't know if there was a BDR or something already sitting there, ready to be debated.
Not that I'm aware.
Okay.
Any other questions from the board? All in favor of approval, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, nay. Chair votes aye, and that is approved. Item 2.2 is receipt, review, and possible approval of Indian policies and procedures for impact aid funding. This is a second reading.
So it was asked at the last board meeting if there was any additional language or language that had been added, and there has not been language added. And I think there was another question about what are the policies, and Mr. Wallace was prepared with information.
I think the other question was regarding policy or procedure 5. Right. Procedure 5 says that the district will respond at least annually in writing to comments and recommendations made by the Indian Parent Advisory Committee, tribal official and parents of Native American children. Mr. Zeisel, I think you asked, do we really do that? And what that procedure is referring to is actually responding to any recommendations or concerns regarding these policies, and that the redrafting of these policies the next year, any input received would be utilized in drafting the policies for the next year. There was no such input over the last year. There is a monthly meeting, and so that's not to say that there aren't questions or things that come up at those meetings, but generally speaking, those questions are answered at the meetings, and if any of that input is regarding the actual policies and procedures, then we address that as we rewrite them.
Any other questions, or how would you like to proceed as a board?
Madam Chairman,
Yes.
I move to approve the Indian policies and procedures for impact aid funding purposes.
Second.
Thank you. We have a motion and a second. Any other discussion? All in favor of approval, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, nay? Chair votes aye, and that is approved. Item 3.1 is our consent agenda.
Move to approve.
Second.
Thank you. We have a motion and a second to approve. Any discussion? All right, all in favor of approval of the consent agenda, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, nay? Chair votes aye, and that is approved. Item 4.1 is a report from our NASB director, and as he is not present, Tammy, do you have any
You
report
didn't
for
give
us?
me anything
All
to
right.
share, so steady as she goes.
Yes.
Yes, Ira had asked me to sit in on the conference call, the Zoom meeting, a week ago Saturday for the NASB. Couple of the things that were brought up, everybody needs to mark your calendar for approximately the 12th through the 15th, I believe, that end of the week for the conference, and encouraging all board members to plan on getting there. It will be at Harvey's up at Lake Tahoe. I believe we probably should, all board members should be contacting Cassie and letting her know that, so she has an idea of what we have to have for rooms, et cetera. So that was going on. The item that Ira mentioned at our last board meeting about the appointed boards, there was quite a bit of discussion with regards to getting prepared, talking points, and getting information ready before the legislative session. Assemblyman Frierson and Senator Kekeffer are the two legislators that are pushing the idea. There was quite a bit of discussion with regards to the 17 counties and the issues primarily within the two largest counties is what has precipitated the discussion and the movement forward. The state constitution says that all districts shall be treated the same, so that created the dilemma that they could only have a bill that addresses Washoe County or just Clark County. It'd impact Esmeralda, Churchill, Pershing, all the rest of the 17 counties. So I'm not sure where that's going to go, but that is one of the talking points that are arguing against the passage of that particular thing.
So just for clarification, Kekeffer and Frierson are the ones pushing for the
Yes,
appointed boards?
They're the, supposedly, I think they might be co-sponsors, but they have been, and I'm not sure the bill, obviously the bill hasn't come out yet, because everything's in a bill draft form to LCB right now. So time will only tell there. One other thing that I thought was rather interesting, NASB goes through and they have corporate sponsors or sponsors who contribute to the operation of the Nevada State School Boards Association. Infinite Campus, which is in all of the different schools for that, they had made a contribution back a couple of months ago, and they requested to get their contribution back, like I said, I thought that was rather interesting because I think they are providing, all the school districts in the state are paying Infinite Campus right there. So it just didn't set real well with me and the reasoning behind that. So, anyway, that's pretty much the gist of what was going on. Issues, revenue streams, professional development funds. Buy board was another thing that was put out there. It wasn't real clear where they were going with that. And they were talking about E-rate funding for internet. And Nevada is supposed to host the Pacific Region Conference in 2024. Other than that, it was about 4 hours of Zoom.
Well, thank you, Mr. Cooney, for enduring the 4 hours of Zoom to share that report with us. And I'd just like to point out, sometimes we disagree as a board, but we hop in and help each other when we need to. And I appreciate your time. Candace, did you have a
No.
comment? All right. Okay, any other items on the NASB director?
Nope.
All right. We will move to item 4.2, items from board members.
I had a couple of things. First of all, I took a tour today of the Elko High School, the new science building and auditorium buildings that are in the process of being built. And, I have to say that science building is going to be something else. It's really, really very exciting for Elko High School to have that going in. And I was very, very impressed with the use of space and how they're managing to incorporate new buildings in the very small building, area that they have to expand the Elko High School. They also talked about, Mr. Casey and Mr. Stefka, how the addition of those two buildings is going to really help the capacity of the Elko High School building campus to the point where, it's going to be very beneficial to Elko County, because we're looking now at maybe not having to build a new high school in the near future, at any rate. So that was all very interesting. And but I will say, I didn't know it, so I'm just going to say it in case nobody else knows it, that the completion date has been pushed back pretty significantly, actually. They were talking the completion date would be into January now, January 21st, but Mr. Stefka said he thinks they should be able to get it done by Christmas. However, that's just the construction. That's not getting things moved in, the very final completion points, etc. So I just thought I'd inform you of that. I also toured one of the rooms that they had set up with the social distancing at the 6-foot markers. And, it was a typical room, like we all know, there's different sizes to the rooms in all the schools. But Mr. Wickersham said that was kind of one of their, general sized rooms, and there was no way he was going to fit. He said he has 33, usually about 33 students would be normally in that classroom, and with the 6-foot social distancing, he can't fit them all in there. Okay, so it's definitely going to take some outside of the box thinking to figure out how to get this done. But with that being said, I wanted to also mention that I have received overwhelming comments, as I know all of you also have, from parents that the online learning situation just really isn't working for the most part. And I know it's only been 2 weeks. There are a lot of kinks to be worked out. And in fact, I would say that I think for the high school kids, it is working better because they can be independent. But for the elementary students and even the ones where the parents are home, they're really struggling if they have multiple children in the family. Then you have the parents that have to go to work and have to take their kids to Boys and Girls Club, and that's definitely not working. So I guess I would just like to impress that upon the superintendent and our administrators that we need to be figuring out, maybe start pushing, you know, the reopening plans even faster to see if we cannot get some sort of hybrid model going, at least in the elementary schools, hopefully before that 9-week date.
Thank you, Mrs. Wise. Any other items from board members?
I'd also reiterate the things that Mrs. Wines said. I received quite a few emails with individuals from the general public and from teachers disagreeing with some of the things that we as a board have said. I went and visited Northside Elementary and went through every classroom. Teachers were in full distance mode. As I went through there with all of those teachers, I visually saw individuals sitting in front of the computer. They were had class on the screen, and there were approximately a third of the teachers at that particular site that when I was watching the screens, watching what the teachers were doing, it was as if there was no difference between what that teacher was doing here and having the kids, first or second graders, circled around in front of them. There was that group of individuals, and they were dealing with it really well. I walked into the next classroom, and the teacher was going through, and they were having difficulties with the connectivity, and the kids were getting bumped off of the system. The teacher was trying to help them get in and get back on, or the teachers, the camera went out, and so it was just audio at that point. Then I went into other classrooms, and the total frustration was just unbelievable, and things were not moving forward like they should. So, you know, I walked away from there having a complete different impression of exactly what is going on. And there, it became very, very apparent that we have some teachers out there that really are talented in being able to do this distance learning, and the other teachers who have been excellent teachers, it's very difficult for them to go into this transition. So, you know, with that gave me pause to sit back and think about what we needed to do, and you know, from my perspective, I would ask that we put the reentry plan on our next agenda and go through and look at that, and because, as I said earlier, it's going to take a 2-week to a 4-week transition for things, and hopefully as our metrics get better, they come down, and we're able to transfer into that the hybrid plan with, and the thing that going to Northside, it really pointed out the kindergarten, the pre-K, the kindergarten, first and second graders, they need to be in school, and the teachers back with those kids, because we've already lost from last March until basically now the movement forward that I think we need to have, and as a board, it's our responsibility to ensure that we get that. So.
Well, and I'd also reiterate that, you know, I understand there's not a ton of kids in the Ruby Valley School, but they meet the social distancing parameters, so those kids are in school every day, and it's going really great. You know, so that is kind of a pilot program, I would say, you know. Truly, it's not a big giant school we're dealing with, but it's still those classrooms. You know, it's the same concept that you would have a classroom with those kids 3 feet apart, you know, and the teacher is up here teaching, and they're all wearing their masks and doing the social distancing and, you know, following the rules, and, you know, it's working.
Other items from board members?
I just want to thank the teachers of this district and the staff for hanging in there. I know it's not been easy at all. I want to thank all the childcare providers that are teaching right now who didn't know that they would be teaching necessarily. I know we're asking a lot of everyone right now. We're asking the world. But I just hope everyone knows that at the root of it is what we're trying to, you know, we're trying to give something great to our kids no matter what it looks like. And it's messy right now, but I have faith that we're going to get through it because this is an amazing community to live in. I'm proud to be from Elko. I'm proud to raise my kids here. And I know if any community can do it, we can. I know it's hard right now. We're COVID fatigued and all that good stuff. And you know, we need our second wind, but I think it's going to come, and I'm just so gobsmacked by everything that I see every day. I'm watching the videos that teachers are putting together. I'm visiting schools. I'm talking to parents who are not happy with me, but they will admit on some level there are some things that are working, and they're seeing that it's getting better overall, and that's a testament to everyone in this county. So I just wanted to thank everyone for not killing us yet, I guess.
I too want to commend the teachers, administrators, and community, especially parents that have been very proactive with their kids online, either with somebody in their place or them themselves. I know we were just watching the news before we came, and I get mine from KSL, and teachers in some of those Utah communities have been dealing with a different situation where they went fully in person and then have been shut down because of outbreaks that are continuing there. And now we're having to go to panic mode for the online focus and not having the training going on there. And the teachers were expressing how overworked they were, and I can imagine the chaos that creates. So I think we've done a good job in transitioning this way. And yes, we should look at, you know, next board meeting, how we can transition there. We also had some emails where I know parents expressed mental health issues and just thinking that the vision that for their students would be dropouts or something along that line. Over the summer, I tried to at least maybe read a book. I don't necessarily like books, but I forced myself. And this one in particular enamored me. And don't get me wrong on books, I'll read an encyclopedia or chemistry book, no problem. But this book, anybody read Educated? It's about a gal who grew up in Idaho, just north of Logan, and were just in adverse family conditions where they couldn't be in public education or do things that integrated them into society. And her brothers and her were basically slave labor, and it's about her story of success, that even though she really didn't have that upbringing of school, she got into BYU after extensive studying for a few years, and she had a few bobbles going through BYU, but graduated and has written this incredible book about her story. So, you know, it's what you do as parents, or what we do as parents, that make our kids resilient. You know, do we roll with the punches, as one of the board interviews said. And then the other email I wanted to address was, you know, somebody was lambasting some of the teachers for their use of Canvas. I've been doing Canvas for 9 semesters now over at GBC, I'm still finding out new things and problems that I've created because of the program. You click one thing, it may change something else. So please be patient with those teachers that are using the Canvas platform. I know that probably is mostly high school. Yeah. And so hopefully they'll get that mastered, or we'll have somebody take a look at that for them. That's all I have.
Well, I'm just gonna say thank you to the teachers, thank you to the parents. I know this is not ideal, I know this is very difficult. You know, I have 6 students at home that I am helping every day. You know, 3 in elementary, 1 in the middle school, 2 in the high school, 2 in high school. And our house is pretty busy. We've got, you know, my phone I have to plug in up here because it's a hotspot all day so that we can keep reasonable internet. You know, I've tried to talk to my kids on a regular basis, even before this, about, you know, we just make the best out of a situation no matter what it is, and we move forward. And in life, we're gonna come across lots of situations that aren't ideal, and we just have to make the best of them. And right now, I appreciate the people who are making the best of it. I appreciate those who have contacted me and said, I don't know if I can do this another day. This is so hard. This is, you know, this is just impossible. But I appreciate that they're reaching out and we can communicate. I know this is not easy. I've had teachers reach out to me and we've talked about, hey, let's talk to your administration. They're working on plans right now for reopening your school, and share your ideas. This is really, really an important time to communicate as a community, you know, as teachers, with administrators, as just everybody. We need to be open and communicate. I loved how several of the candidates for District 3 mentioned that, how important open communication was. And as a board, we are trying to be open with our communication, trying to be available to people when they have concerns. I know Dr. Robinson is, and our staff here at central office. I know our administrators, our teachers are really trying to be available to people when they need help. I know people are saying, you know, I'm having an issue with one thing or another. And I've said, please reach out to your teacher. I know your teachers are working hard, and it may take them a little bit of time to resolve your issue because they've got lots of issues they're dealing with. So please give everybody some grace right now. Be patient. I know our children are amazing. They're resilient, and they are going to come through this better than we think, because I don't think we give them enough credit. My little first grader can sit at the computer, and at this point, he can navigate almost everything that he needs to. We still click on things that, you know, take him to a different part of the, you know, the classroom than he needs to be in, but we get him back there. And I think we need to give our kids more credit because they're amazing. They are digital natives. They know how to handle this stuff. And we as parents aren't, a lot of us. That's not what we grew up with. But our kids are, and they are amazing at overcoming things if we will give them the opportunity to do it and let them be our guide right now. Let them help you as a parent to calm down, make things happen, and as soon as we can, they'll be back in the classroom with their teachers, and we'll be moving forward, you know, providing the best education possible. But that's also what's happening right now. And I just really want to thank everyone in the county who is, regardless of your level of frustration, many of you are very frustrated. Some of you are saying, hey, this works for me. I appreciate the work you're doing for your students. And like Tammy said, even people who are, you know, childcare providers, whoever who is reaching, there are people who are reaching out and saying, hey, I can help. If you need help with your student, you know, different organizations that are reaching out. We appreciate everyone as a community coming together. I think COVID has really helped us see we have some real weaknesses in our society that we can overcome, but we have to come up with solutions instead of just complaining. And I appreciate the people who have come with solutions and ideas. I guess I know teachers are reaching out to their administrators saying, help, I don't know how we're gonna make this hybrid work or whatever, but they're coming with solutions. And I encourage parents and students to do the same. Come with solutions, come with ideas that are going to be positive and help us all make it through this, because we are strong and we can do it. So that is what I have. And again, thank you for everybody being here, and and being part of this, being part of your child's education and the education of all of our students in Elko County. If there's nothing else from the board, we'll move to item 5.1, our superintendent's report.
Okay, thank you. So we are in the midst of challenges and stressors, and I thought it might be refreshing to see some of the great work that is also being done as our schools are working to create community, in this almost impossible situation that we find ourselves in. They've been working very hard. They've been incredibly creative, administrators and teachers working together to make some, again, opportunities for community. So I have a couple of videos, and I don't know, Mac, if you're ready to set those up to be able to see them, but there are 2 videos that I just wanted to share. I asked principals to send to me some of these fun videos that we've been hearing about. Some of our schools have done open houses through Zoom, and just done wonderful productions, and so that children can be introduced to their teachers and support staff and the many, many professions we have that it takes to run a school. So it's just been some really, really fun ways of making children feel and families feel that they're right there working together. So Mac, I'm trying to give you some lead time with the videos. If they're not going to work, I know we were having a little bit of trouble with them. Well, let me tell you about them, and then we'll get them up on our Facebook page so that you can take a look at them. But I have a couple that are really fun. Our 4th grade teacher heroes at Sage Elementary School did an introduction for their students, and it was really fun, the cartoon. But the production looked quite professional, so I thought that would be fun to look at. But I will make sure these get up on social media so that we will have a chance to look at it, because you don't want to miss them. Ms. Roberts at West Wendover Elementary School did a welcome to virtual PE, and that one was fun. Oh, I'm hearing something.
I'm ready when you are.
Thank you, Matt. Go ahead. We're practicing with it, and our tech department is also amazing in what they've been able to do and support our families with it, but technology sometimes is not our friend. So, all right, Mac, let's go ahead and get that onto social media rather than take any more time this evening, but they're just 2 of the many that I received, and we want to be able to get those out and share them with people. So we'll continue to work on sharing them with the board, the community.
Any questions or guidance for our superintendent?
I have 2 questions. Has there been any talk from the NIAA about reconsidering the seasons, especially since we're going to be having frozen ground up here, essentially?
Not that I'm aware of. I know they had a recent board meeting. I have not gotten notes on what the result of that was, but I've not heard anything. And I think that if there was that reconsideration, that would have been.
Right, yeah. And then you mentioned, or somebody mentioned sub-training that was going to go on to get them up to speed on the technical aspects. Has that already occurred, or is that in the process of happening?
Yeah, that's in the process of happening. Our team of instructional technology coaches have been working to put that together. We got the processes and practices together in identifying when a teacher will need a sub in this environment. It's a little bit different than in a typical environment, so we have those laid out, and the professional development is created, and I believe we have a schedule for providing it. I don't know.
So the professional development is built. It's a series of videos that our department has put together. And we actually have admin council with principals meetings tomorrow morning. We're going to review it with our principals tomorrow. And one of the first steps that had to happen with that is in order to access, at least Google Meets, I believe it was, to record those trainings. Every single sub has to have an Elko County School District Gmail account in order to access those. So our IT department has been working for the last 2 weeks on the list of subs that we've used. The first list was just a list of subs that we have in our district. which we've never removed anybody from. So the first list was like 800 people long. So it was going through that and identifying which subs we actually have still been using the last couple of years. It's down to about 300 and some, so we've created a Gmail account for every one of those people. So we can now review this training and procedures with principals and teaching staff, and then we will be notifying those subs and making it available to them.
You remind me of something else too, when you respond to that. Have we figured out how many, if an outbreak did occur, have we figured out how many days like the teacher would need to be out, whether they're positive or negative and all those scenarios?
Yes, we have. If a teacher should be tested as positive, and even if they're in a close contact, the guidelines say 14 days. And so that's typical, whether it be a student, teacher, it's a 14-day isolation period. And we have guidelines that have come from the state that have indicated, and there are different scenarios depending on how isolated a teacher may be, what sort of space in a building they may take up. If they're a teacher that travels in the building and is in more spaces, there is guidelines from the state that I think roughly are 2 or 3 outbreaks in a school, again, depending on the position and the person that would test positive would determine the number of days it may take to clean a school. So it could be we can just clean the area that the person occupies to a 24-hour potential closure for cleaning to a 72-hour, again, depending on how widely impacted the school building may be. And so we have those guidelines.
If a teacher is negative, they can get back to the classroom immediately, or is there a wait period?
If a teacher is, and I'll say teacher, if any employee is, it depends. If they're symptomatic and they are tested and they test negative, we would, if they're contacting the COVID hotline, then that would likely get them into an immediate testing, the quick turnaround test. And if that test is negative, there still is the requirement that they would stay out for those days, because the test result, they could test negative right away and then test positive later. It could take a longer incubation period because it's a range of 14 days. There's not an exact to it. So basically, I think it's just safe to say that if a person is presenting with symptoms or a close contact to somebody who has symptoms, that it's a 14-day expectation that they would be off.
Will we also have access to the numbers of infections as in the district, like currently and as we progress here?
We
like as part of your weekly update, or?
Yeah, we can certainly
Okay.
make that a part of the update.
And I'd be interested in the number of students, not necessarily positive, but it just excluded.
Right.
Because I know that is something that Washoe County briefly put out and then thought better of it. After 2 full days of school, they had 600 kids excluded from their district. These kids were not positive, but they could not go to school for 14 days. And that's something that we need to be mindful of as we move forward, because that will be impacting us. And then that sort of brings me, I hear a lot about the notification system in Washoe and how terrible it is. Are we being proactive in getting out, like making sure we have current phone numbers, current emails for parents so those notifications arrive in a timely fashion? Are we confident in our notification system, that sort of thing?
Our information that we have for parents is as good as the information that we're given. So thank you for bringing that up, because I encourage families to continually keep the schools updated. If anything changes in regards to your contact information, please make the schools one of the first places that you contact. The messaging system that we have, there are some options regarding how a parent can be contacted. And so I would encourage everybody just to do a quick check, go into your system and check to see that you are have the boxes checked so that you're receiving notifications in the manner in which that you want to receive them. so that you're not missing letters or notifications. That's something good to just do once in a while, just to make sure that your information is in there. But the intent, the plan is that when we have to close a school, should we have to close a school, or should we have to close an area of the school for that intensive cleaning, that certainly we're gonna contact families and staff as quickly as we possibly can. It will also be dependent on that communication that we have with our public health officials, with the employees and the families of students who are displaying symptoms, not feeling well, have information about somebody in the family and a close contact in the household who may not be well. That information is going to be critical, that communication is coming to us. We will take that information and move right away on that information that we have. Understanding that we may get that information in the evening at 7 o'clock at night, and we have to make a determination depending on the numbers, depending on the location that person occupies in the building. There may be a call at 7 o'clock at night that says our school has to be closed for 24 hours. We want that. We will give the information as quickly as we have it.
And I understand we've already had a situation with just staff and teachers in a building where we've already had to close a location. And how did that go with our cleaning team coming in and looking at that when we have students coming through those buildings when we reopen? How are we going to make sure we address that and keep education consistent?
Right. Well, we've actually had more than one occasion that has happened, and we've had a number of different combinations of whether it be testing positive or close contact or whatever. And again, as soon as we've gotten the information, we have a team that's already been identified in our custodial staff, and they are properly trained and prepared with the materials to come in and do the cleaning that is required to do. And we immediately then contact the people that need to be contacted based on what the situation is. And people have been quarantined and have been spending the 14 days out.
And that will just be a larger process when we have students involved.
Correct. Correct.
But we have a process in place. That's good. All right. Any other questions for our superintendent?
I have one question with regards to the construction update. I don't know, maybe if Kelly can address this. With the update, the mechanical phase upgrade of phase 1 at Wells High School, I noticed that there was in the accounts payable, there was a check that was for a considerable amount. I also note that it says that there's still a punch list that remains. Is there any money that was held back for that particular punch list, or when we look at our accounts payable, if that pays off what Armaza Construction?
We maintain our
retainer
5% until the end of the contract.
5%? Okay. Until that's, okay. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions from the board? All right, we'll move on to item 6.1, approval of the accounts payable.
Move to approve the accounts payable.
Second.
All right, thank you. That was a quick motion and approval. All right, any discussion? All right, I will be disclosing that I have a family member who serves on the board of one of the recipients on the accounts payable, so I will be abstaining. If there's no other discussion, all in favor of approval of the accounts payable, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, nay? Chair abstains and the motion still carries. Item 7.1 is a final opportunity for comments from the public. Please.
My name is Gretchen Lutz, and I've spoken at several of the last meetings. And since Dr. Robinson agreed that communication, as well as I think the board agrees, communication is a key point, I think it's important that tonight I continue to communicate with the board and the community of Elko of how it's going. I teach at Grammar No. 2. I teach first grade. Due to the circumstances this year, I only have 13 students. So my job is significantly different than some of the other teachers in Elko County who have a full load in their classroom of 20-plus students, because 13 is a gift in terms of the time and the attention I'm able to give them, especially during a time like we have right now. However, since April, I feel again that my employer, I have not, and I've checked with my peers, have not been asked one time if I'm comfortable teaching face-to-face with the pandemic that currently is going on. So as the district, taking my opinion aside from how I feel about being face-to-face, I'm not sure that the employees of Elko County have been asked how we feel about going back face-to-face, and if we have options and what those options even would look like in regards to whether or not we go to a hybrid or we continue to stay online or we're fortunate enough to be back face-to-face. I think that's something that very soon should be communicated from staff members, how they feel, because as we know, some of my coworkers have had to make the choice to retire early or resign because they're not comfortable in that position. And so I think you can't take that for granted. I think you really need to reach out to your employees and find out how they feel regarding that. With that, following up, Dr. Robinson mentioned that if an employee, depending on the situation with contact or test positive, needs to take a 14-day leave, I still, as an employee, do not know what my sick leave stands right now in regards to COVID. If one of my children get COVID, yes, I may potentially still be able to teach online from home. What does that look like with my sick leave? Very quickly, my sick leave is out. And so I think that's something that needs to be expressed to employees of what this looks like, because right now I don't know what that looks like. And that's something you take pretty serious in a time like this, especially we're going into just normal colds, influenza, other kinds of bugs. So on that questionnaire we fill out every morning, do I have a little bit of a sore, scratchy throat? Maybe, but very careful in terms of thinking about how we respond to those questions, because I've only got right now this much sick leave that I'm aware of, because it has not been communicated to the staff that I work with at my school location. The distance learning model, if we choose to go back face-to-face, and parents do have that right to choose to keep their child in a distance learning model separate from NNVA, I want those parents to consider what the last 2 or 3 weeks have been like, because I know for the parents of my 13 students, my parents are dedicated, they are wanting the best education for their children, and it has taken a lot for them to learn my teaching style and my expectations, and to start completely over with a brand new teacher for these 6-year-olds if they choose to stay in that online model is 2 or 3 more weeks of lost educational learning time, because there is a huge learning curve. My little ones, I've got things copied on colored paper, I've got them numbered, I've got them in colored folders, I've done everything I can possibly do, and we still just that learning curve, because unfortunately not all of my 13 students have an adult that's able to sit right there with them to go through the schoolwork. A lot of my kiddos, parents are coming home on their breaks from work. They've got siblings in high school. I have kids that have a sibling that's just in 3rd or 4th grade that's trying to manage them. Just getting them to take the online attendance is still a feat for those kids that don't have that support. I think the attendance, how teachers are being expected to take it, should be reconsidered, because I have families that are choosing to work in all of my live sessions are recorded, but because of their work schedules, they're needing to do that work on the weekends. And I think by looking at if my students are logging in on Monday through Friday as a 6-year-old, if their parents are working night shift a couple days of the week and they're not off until the weekend, I don't think that's necessarily a fair ding on those families that are making the time up on the weekend and they're logging and they're communicating to me what they're doing, to mark them as not present, not doing the work on that day just because they're not able to log in. So I think that's something that we really need to consider. When Mr. Cooney was speaking of his experience at Northside, just yesterday I was bumped off 3 times during one of my 30-minute live sessions with my kids. Unfortunately, the learning is being lost because of that. Dr. Robinson referred to teachers using Zoom. I hope that was just a generic statement because we have been told explicitly that that's not a program that we should be using with our children, although I think a lot of us would feel more comfortable with the capabilities that program does offer, and I know that has been expressed. But thanks, that's all I have to share with you.
Thank you, Gretchen. Anyone else that wishes to make a public comment, please?
My name is Emily Bailey. I'm a preschool teacher at Great Basin College. I'm also a mother to 5 children in the school district, and I'm just going to read my comment. When deciding on the reopening, please take into consideration the whole child and consider ways to be creative in making sure that they are still getting the social and emotional support that they have been so deprived of these past few months, and do everything you can to help them have normal socialization in school, including during lunch and recess. As parents and educators, we know that children have a difficult time learning when they are not socially or emotionally okay, and these kids have been through so much, as you know. So when making these plans, I would ask that you have this at the forefront of your plan as well, and strongly consider the social and emotional well-being of our children. Thank you.
Thank you, Emily. Anyone else? All right, please.
My name is Sarah Carone. I have a 7th grader and a 3rd grader. I also am the director at Great Basin College Preschool. I just want to say that, as Emily was talking about, I do worry about the social emotional well-being of our kids. When you guys brought up that we were going to be doing distance learning, it was said that it would not be crisis learning that we had in the spring. I can tell you my Northside teacher is phenomenal, and we have had no crisis learning. My middle schooler has been left to the wolves for the most part. I'm not here to ding teachers. I'm an educator. That's not what I'm talking about, but I'd like to see some consistency. I don't know if that's up to the teachers, the principal, who that needs to go to, but my 7th grader is pretty much left to herself. Not a lot of online learning going on, a lot of videos that she's directed to, and to watch as this person online is teaching her, not the teacher. And then when she asks for feedback from her teachers, it's very negative to her. So I just want to see some more consistency if we are doing that online learning. I'd also like you to consider when you are talking in your reopening plan that you reach out to some of us providers in the community that already do have kids in our program. We have been going for 4 weeks now, and we have great success with that. We have preschoolers, so we have 3 feet of space for them, but they do not stay 3 feet apart. So, but we have had great success with what we're doing so far. So I do recommend that you reach out to those of us that are servicing kids already. Another thing is we are being asked to look at supporting school-age kids and providing programs at our preschools, Boys and Girls Club, all those things. I don't feel like that's necessarily our job. I don't understand how they can be in our programs when they can't be in the schools, but we as a community are trying to support those families. I personally have been affected with teachers at my school that have kids at home that they're stressed about because they have no one home with them. I'm fortunate that I have people to help my kids out, but I'm not there all day either. So just kind of all those thoughts going on. So thank you.
Thank you, Sarah. Is there anyone else? Please.
Sure. You can hear me from back there. I did want to add a little bit to some of the comments.
Just tell us your name first.
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm Mike Varney.
Thank you.
I have 2 children in the Oakville County School District. And I just wanted to add a little bit that, you know, listening to the board tonight, it's apparent that you all understand the importance of getting kids back into actual school versus this online. I just wanted to add on the ancillary parts of school, the things that they're missing that can't be taught in distance learning. Punctuality, the hygiene, the getting ready for school, the school programs, the socialization, the support of friends. All these things are missing right now. They get a little bit of it with now being online, but they're missing a lot of these ancillary items that are involved in the school program. They've touched on a lot of the things that I'd would have addressed, but I think it's very important that we, consider how quickly we can get them back into school, and it's probably, as a board member, you consider erring on the side of safety. Well, you mentioned in one of your interview questions tonight, evaluating data. There's a lot of data out there from the CDC. I spent a lot of time reviewing it, and our kids are a lot safer than a lot of other people in the community. Their immunity is better, their reaction to this is better. So I would also ask that we maybe not be so considerate of erring on the side of caution, but that when we consider the whole scenario, they can take a little more risk in what they're doing. That they're missing too much in their childhood and in their education right now.
Thank you, Mike. All right, we do want to note that there were also a lot of comments that came in online, and the board members have all reviewed those, and they will be attached to the board minutes. We appreciate everyone who continues to contribute with your comments online so that we can get that input even if you can't be here. We're really pleased to be able to broadcast the meetings and have that input. This is something that COVID has brought to the Elko County School District that we did not have before, is more availability of the meetings, more availability of opportunity to comment publicly, even though we don't read all of them because we've had major feedback saying please don't read every comment out loud in the meeting, but obviously the board reviews all of those. So we appreciate everyone's contribution, and again, thank you for all you're doing as we're working through all of these challenges. There's nothing else. We will move to item 8.1, adjournment of the meeting. Thank you. All in favor of adjournment, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Chair votes aye, and we are adjourned. Thank you again for joining us in whatever capacity you've joined us. Have a wonderful evening.